Hello and welcome to the Dance of the Soul. And I'm Natasha Venter, and Regan Forston is with me. We're doing this partnership in this wonderful show of talking about perspectives and remembering that your truth is your truth, but we're here. So I'm Natasha Venter. I'm a intuitive, multi-life intuitive. I'm a spiritual counselor. I love to do energy seeing with my mediumship, and I also, like to bring, a wonderful consciousness to the life we're in. So with that I'm here to help you, and with that, and remembering that this in this show, both Regan and I wish for you to have your own truth. We're not here to have an idea of what you should be thinking, but we like to support you in your process of negotiating life. And so Regan Forston is a very wonderful man who has gone through a lot in his life and who's negotiated many things, and now he's a clinical hypnotherapist, and he has other techniques that he helps bring awarenesses to in his therapy practice, and that kind of stuff. So Regan, thank you. You were in your van
Yeah,
traveling again,
I
and
am.
that's the thing, is that we're kind of like the traveling show. It doesn't matter where we're at. At the end of this month, I'll be in another home myself, down at my girlfriend's house down in California. I don't get to see you this time though, but
Nice to see you too, Natasha.
yeah, but
Yeah, I'm in
we'll
Pismo Beach right now. I can feel the ocean breeze right here. I'm driving from San Francisco down to LA. Um, I used to be, I was an actor for 12 years of Screen Actors Guild. And so every once in a while I get a call to audition for a TV show or something. So I auditioned for Let's Make a Deal. And then they called me and said, yep, you're crazy enough to be on there. So, uh, you know, it's an interesting show because you got to be kind of you have to kind of be willing to look silly, you know. And since I was an actor for years, I figure, okay, I don't think that'll hurt my current reputation as a therapist too much to be on there. I'll be in a, I'll be actually people won't recognize me probably, but because they'll probably tell what I do,
yeah.
because I'll be Bumper the Clown. So I've got a special plate for my teeth, so it looks like I've just got two buck teeth in the front, and got whatever. So I got my old clown costume out that I used when I was doing that 30, 40 years ago.
Oh,
So it should be
fun.
fun. Um, yeah. But anyway, like Natasha and I, and the reason we do this, we're both, I guess you'd put us in the light worker category. And we try to help people get more information from what lies beyond this physical world that we're in now. So many people believe in that, and when they're watching the show, we both are able to access and get you information from the other side. But we have two modalities here because Natasha, she's been connected since she was born, about, just has this connection with the other side. So she's able to do readings, long distance, on Zoom or phone call or whatever. She can feel your energy and she can help you get answers from the other side, from the guides. And maybe if you want to have conversations with people that passed on, we'll be talking about grief today. So this is one thing she's able to do, is to have you have a conversation with these people from the beyond.
Mhm.
um, I do it a little differently because, like me and most people, we don't have the abilities that Natasha has. But when you find yourself in a deep state of trance, which most people can reach, and that's what I do, then you become kind of like a medium where you're able to see things just like Natasha sees. So, you know, it's just two different ways of getting to the same place and getting information. So I work with the Newton Institute. But today, our topic again, I think, if we do this half a dozen times a year, even with grief, it's one of the things people they need some help with. Um, and I've even expanded so much, Natasha, from when we talked about the last time about, grief covers so many things. It's not just when you have someone close to you that passes away. It could be a pet that you have that you're grieving. It could be a job loss that you have that you're grieving. It could be a friendship where, maybe someone who was really close to you all of a sudden says, bye, I don't want you as my friend anymore. And I mean, any of these things where you're dealing with loss, right? We
Mhm.
would call it grief, comes with that. So it could be, like I say, the loss of a job, friend,
Exactly, and I
someone
know a
that
lot of
dies.
us are struggling with our diets, our food intake, And a lot of us are finding, out that we can't digest food that we used to digest or that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that triggers a lot of grief. That can
Yeah.
actually trigger a grief that is equal to like losing a parent or losing an animal or a fur family, or if you love snakes and spiders and that kind of stuff. They're not fur families necessarily, but they're they're not of the human species. So with
Yeah.
that when we're going through things, remembering that grief, it's not a straight line either. um and I what I'm witnessing is a lot of people, I'm talking about people who are in grief, but yet they're in the depression of grief.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I see grief as like a wheel. If you have like an old wagon wheel, right? And you have the spokes coming out and you have all these different facets. You can be extremely laughing in grief. You can be extremely crying in grief. And then there's even a spoke that says grief or
Hmm.
depression, right? There's a depression. But then there's also, you can get, if you have the wheel going around, you can also get into a depression of grief. And it's outside the wheel, it's outside the norm, it's thick and it's heavy, and it's very stagnant, and people have a hard time going when they're in that depression of grief, that they have a hard time getting moving, even though you maybe have depression during grief, but there's depression of grief. I'm not necessarily saying this in the best way I know, but at the same time though, we have to honor that depression is part of the process when you're grieving, and honor yourself for it. Anger, oh my gosh, people,
Anger
I've
is a
had
big part
people
of it.
come up to me and say, I didn't realize how angry I could be in grief.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, yes, yes, yes. And I tell people all that time, you got to get in a practice of releasing that anger, because of the fact that if we don't, it just builds up and it builds up, and then we scream and yell at people that we don't realize that we're screaming and yelling at them. And so there's many facets of grief and it's so emotionally based. Grief is a very emotional based scenario in your life. And
Hmm.
so if you can honor yourself, being stagnant, no energy, lethargic, because there's a difference between no energy and lethargic. There and or you go into extremes of wanting to be out and not being able to settle. You get antsy because you don't want to concentrate on what you're concentrating on. So you can have that extra energy that I gotta do, I can't concentrate, I can't, and it's there's a lot of different things that happen during the grief. We get so out of our own knowings.
Yeah.
It's not a norm, it's a beginning of a new normal. It's a new normal.
And well, let's even start out too. People say, well, how long does grief last? And it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Once you've gone through grief once, you'll get an idea of what it is for you. Because, I have some people that have had one of my friends who I'm going to see when I go back down to Los Angeles. Her mom died, oh my gosh, 15, 18 years ago, maybe
Hmm.
20 years ago. And she still feels this heavy grief all the time. And she's going, why do I still feel it? It's been 18 years. I know my mom's okay, but I still have this grief. Some people, their grief is relatively short. I mean, I know some people, 2, 3 months, they're done with the, they feel they're back to normal. And some people try to make them other part. I know this one family I'm thinking of, other people in the family tried to make my client feel bad because she got over her grief in 3 months and they weren't over their grief. So they thought, well, didn't you love our mom as much as we loved her? Or, no, you can't go by, the amount of time that rates how much you loved somebody,
Hmm.
it's just different. It's
It
different
is
for,
different, and maybe that person who got through the grief quickly, perceived quickly, maybe when their animal passed away 2 years later, that they're just overrun with grief because they haven't
yeah,
processed all the grief. Because I can tell you, as a
yeah,
witness and living through it myself many different times, that really grief is just it's a journey. It's like the more it's like you start off in the world, and you're single and you're in a car by yourself, right? and then somebody dies, and then they get in the car with you, and then as you keep going down the road, and a dog dies, and then they get in the car with you, and you feel their
Mhm.
emotions, and then so it's like, and then as you lose people and things like that, that your car gets fuller and fuller of this energy of, holy crumb, I'm
Of
losing
loss, yeah.
people, and the loss, and then it's almost like one adds on to the other. It's like my dad
Yeah,
died,
good
and
point.
then I had an animal die, and so I grieved my animal, and then my dad, and then my mom passed away, and then I grieved my mom, my animal, and my dad, and then another animal passed away, and then I grieved the animal, my dad, my mom, my that animal, and then my dad. So it adds
Yeah,
on, and so don't worry about if you're carrying a lot of people in your travels in your car,
yeah,
metaphorically, right? That, because it is what it is, and that's the thing is that, especially if you lose a child, that is something that I don't think that one ever relieves themselves of. But I get to it, what I understand, it gets to a walkable moment. It gets to an under, it's not necessarily that you understand, but you just know that that you're able to negotiate the world in front of you somehow.
yeah.
And that's what I call a walkable grief.
Well, yeah, and too, when people say they're through their grief, most of us that have lost people that we love, um, I guess maybe grief can sometimes maybe change to just like a deep sadness or sadness sometimes. So like when I think about my mom, my dad, my brother that have passed on, there's always a little breeze of sadness that comes in still because you
A
still miss them.
twinge.
Yeah. So you you never really get you never really get over that. I mean, it's because we miss people. Just like if you had a good friend and they had to move to Hawaii, and you don't, you're afraid of flying, so you're never going to go over and be able to see them. Now we have FaceTime, at least, people can do that kind of thing. But when someone moves away, you still have the sadness, or you still have this kind of loss. um, but the good news is what Natasha and I both know from our work and from our own life experience, that there is really an afterlife for sure. I mean, that's something we know for sure. So because some people think, well, what if there isn't an afterlife and they're just gone and that's it, they're just going to dust? Well, they're not. you know we know that when you pass away, there's even a certain uh, there's a certain routine that everybody goes through with meeting their guide, um, and then their guide takes you kind of from there, kind of takes you back home again.
Mhm.
Someone always escorts you, because when people leave their human body, sometimes it takes them a little bit to reorient themselves. Like some people, uh, on my website, there's a young lady going through the life between life process, where she goes to a past life, sees herself pass away, and then when she's out of her body, her boyfriend strangled her in a past life. Well, she's like saying, "Oh, I should have fought back," or something, blah blah blah, like this or something. Then a guide, in a sense, kind of taps her on the shoulder and says, "You're not dead," and she's kind of like, "Oh, I guess I'm not," kind of thing. So, but death is weird, and everybody takes different things. And Natasha, that point you brought up about the grief piling on, you know, it can get quite a bit, especially like me now, as you get older, more and more and more people that I know, or of that, have died.
Mhm.
It's made me a lot more aware of the my limited time that I have left. If it's 10 or 15 or 20 years, to me that's pretty limited. you know
I know, but yet knowing you, I couldn't imagine that, you know?
yeah. But I know the thing is that both of us know that when we pass away, and we're out of our body and looking down at the body, and it's going to be like fine, because we'll immediately kind of get into the bigger picture of things and know that it's just a play that just ended.
Mhm.
And now it's time to go backstage and move on to another play.
Yes, exactly, and, hello, Veronica, how are you? So
Hey,
Veronica says,
Veronica.
"I'm still grieving my sister's passing. It's been almost 6 years.
6
I don't
years.
wanna
Wow.
keep grieving. I know she's happy and pain-free, so why can't I just be happy for her?" Because, that's the thing that, my dad, this is my 30-year anniversary of my dad passing. you
30
know,
years. Wow.
30 years. And so with that my kid's turning 30. That's why I know it's 30 years, because I had kids at the same time my parents passed. That, it is something that we do go through and we do miss, because of the fact that we have this, when something is out of time, when things are out of alignment in time, that, like you, Veronica, losing your sister, it was before she should have went. And so there's a consciousness in us that says, but this wasn't supposed to happen.
Right.
And
Hmm.
and if we have that moment that gets triggered in us, this isn't supposed to happen, then those moments, and it doesn't matter what it is, it could be somebody saying something to you that this isn't what's supposed to happen, or a moment of life when you lose a job and they tell you you did something wrong and damn well you didn't do that, this wasn't supposed to happen. That those are those memories that trigger us, and they're almost like a uh you know aging myself here, it's kind of like a record, going a record. It's almost like a scratch in a record. It's a scratch in time, it's a scratch in knowing. And so with that your sisters triggered that part of you, and that's why sometimes it's hard to move on in a fullity of doing. And I can tell you, 30 years later, I miss my dad like it was yesterday some days.
Yeah.
That's part of the human experience of feeling emotions. And that's what we need to honor. And I can tell you, you probably miss her more when you needed her partnership with what you're going through. And so many times when we go through stressful moments, like my dad wasn't another voice of reason for me, right? And so when I'm going through stressful moments, sometimes I go, Dad, why you know I wish that I could hear you physically. I can hear
Yeah.
him spiritually, but I need to hear you physically. And like my husband's been talking a little bit about moving, and this is a house that I know my dad helped us get. So when we move out of here, it's going to be greater than just moving out of a house that my kids lived in or grew up in.
Yeah.
It's got more of an etch in it that to me. And so I'm already starting that grieving process, knowing that this might be another 5 years process. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
don't feel awkward about or punishing yourself about feeling something. That's part of the human experience, is that we're supposed to feel something. And if usually we feel more when we're going through something. And Veronica, I know that, things are happening. I know Veronica, and I know things are happening outside of her world, that she's starting to go through the grief process again. And so that's going to again trigger that other part of you in you. And there's sometimes a part of us that knows something's going to happen, and then we wonder why we're so emotional, because there's a part of us that knows that, hey, I know that somebody's going to be leaving me soon, and I don't know who it is, but I just have that feeling that somebody's going to be moving. And so with that trust that process, and it's okay if you're achy sometimes and you want to cry about her, and actually it's
Yeah.
good. That's a way of honoring the person, right? So, Veronica says, "I feel it." Yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I know that you're very sensitive about things, and so please know that when we are sensitive about things, and when we're not sensitive about things, because I don't want to put anybody in a box, that grief is its own journey. One person can't say that you shouldn't be feeling this at this time, because somebody can go through extreme happiness at the same time as somebody's going through extreme lowness, and their siblings, and the passing happened at the same time for that person. Everybody's going to go through it differently, and so how can you negotiate that but feel what you're feeling at the time and honoring yourself for it?
Yeah. Sometimes part of the grief is, when I do the tapping with people, to help them when they're going through grief, which helps. It let's say if they close their eyes and they think about their grief and it goes to a 6, above a 5, hey, why not lower it? Get it down to a 2 or 3 or 0. It doesn't bother you. But sometimes what pops up is part of the especially if it's gone a long time. it's not just the losing the person. It's sometimes the guilt that people have sometimes, like
Mhm.
things like, oh, I should have talked to that person more. I should have been in contact more with them, and I didn't. I was so busy with my life, and I know I should, because you're not thinking. Well, especially in Veronica's case, there, you're not thinking your sister's going to die. You're thinking maybe your parents or somebody old, or someone sick's going to die. But we never think of our siblings sometimes dying, at least before us anyway. But sometimes you're thinking, oh, now I can't do this with her. Oh, what if I'd only done this or been more? I wish I would have appreciated her more, or whatever. But there's these little things that hang on to that are part of that energy that's still stuck.
Yeah, and
After all
that's
the
that's
years.
that wheel. I call that the wheel of grief, right?
Yeah,
And sometimes when we get into a wheel and we get stuck in, let's say, shame, or we get stuck in sadness, or we get stuck in why didn't I, or this should have went this way, and it's kind of like the spoke of the wheel, and then there's one spoke, like if the wheel is going through and one spoke kind of sticks out, right? And then the wheel can't move, the emotions can't move because that thing is stuck. And this is kind of like the metaphor that I use here. And so when we get stuck in that of jealousy, or we can get stuck in of survival's guilt, or we get stuck in whatever this label is that you get stuck in. And sometimes you can get stuck in depression, right? So when we can kind of give that understanding a voice, why didn't I listen? Well, I didn't listen because that's not who I was supposed to be at that time,
yeah,
right? Or that kind of thing. And so you give it a voice, then that spoke gets kind of lifted up a little bit, and then the emotions can keep moving through.
yeah,
And so, Veronica, if you're really pained by this, really pained by it, then look and see what is attached to it, because there's so many things in grief that gets attached when we're talking about emotions. And it's
yeah,
almost like, okay, here's a bag, here's a paper bag. What are we going to throw in today that we're feeling about why we shouldn't be feeling so guilty about or grieving so much right now, and figure out what is in that bag so you can go, oh, I didn't think that I had survival guilt. Hmm. Why do I have survival guilt? She had a better life or didn't have a better life, perceived, right? And so sometimes we have survival guilt because, they had a better life. Why did that? I'm here and they left, right?
yeah,
So think about what's kind of coming up for when you keep going into the deepers. Now, I can tell you there are times where I still, after my dad of 30 years, still sit down and cry,
yeah.
you
And
know,
that's okay. I
and
mean,
it's
that's
okay.
okay still,
It's a
right?
moment.
Yeah. So, but if the grief is um, pulling you down, I mean, it's okay to cry about it once in a while, but if it's too much,
Mhm,
we all know when it's too much. Sometimes it feels good to cry because then you makes you feel alive. You know,
mhm.
wow, I must really be a good person because my heart still misses my dad or misses who died. Um, but Victoria, right? That's who's talking to us.
Veronica,
Oh, Veronica. I'm sorry.
I
Okay,
know you're
sorry,
you're
Veronica.
you're thinking about. I do the same thing when I'm thinking. So,
With the V's, Veronica. Um,
mhm.
Veronica, maybe you know this already, but go check out Havening Touch, Havening Touch official site. If you go to the official site, there's some great videos on there. But it's so simple. Like if it's too much sometimes, if you just like you're hugging yourself and you just go down to your elbows and you just talk about it. Said, oh, I miss my sister so much. I know, why can't she still be here? God dang it, why did she have to go? So I'm so pissed off. She should have been here with me where she could spend time with me and we could do things. And then the other part of the havening is you're just talking out loud or to yourself if there's people around. But this is good to do just when you're by yourself and you go back and forth like this as you're talking about it. And then the last thing is you just kind of swiping the hands. You're just saying, oh, I just feel so bad. I hate this. I hate this. Every few months, I just feel this loss. I feel this and just talk about whatever it is that's bothering you, about that, and just do that just for a few minutes. You will be totally surprised. Like me just doing that right now, I feel like, oh yeah, okay. It changes your energy, and it's one of the new Havenings kind of really joined the field of energy psychology now. It's real easy to learn, and it works every time. Like now, I can physically feel my body, energized now, and instead of down, that way. So that'll kind of help.
And, that's the whole thing. It's not necessarily about saying that you shouldn't feel it, but it's
Yeah,
working your way through it. And the body has a way of processing if we give it a chance. And remember, she's only been gone 6 years.
yeah,
And she was an element for you. And so there's no I should be's in guilt or in grief. There's no should be's in grief. There's no timeline. Now, I would suggest, like, I had a session with someone who that she lost her I wouldn't call it husband of love. And the depression, she was in the depression of grief, and it was hard for her to get up and out of it. And that's the only time I would say that there could be some hope for movement, is when somebody is so depressed that they can't get out of bed, that they rely on people. And but it's almost like people get into a moment where there's a benefit to it. Like, if I'm grieving for someone, or I'm sick, or there's something like that, and you start learning that people are doing things for you, it's a natural occurrence that us humans kind of say, oh, I don't have to do the work to get there. you know it's
yeah,
like my kid didn't talk until after 2 years of age, and when about 12, 13 months, I stopped saying words for her, because she had to learn how to speak. But yet at the same time, I understood that she wasn't speaking right away because she just didn't feel the energy was so overwhelming. And so I
yeah,
gave her that chance. But at the same time, she had to do some communication towards wanting to do better, because of the fact that if we always do something for everyone, then they have a harder time standing up. And when you're in grief, there's a muscle that we got to strengthen, and it's the vulnerability strength. It's that vulnerability muscle. It's that I don't know what to be at this moment. I don't know what to do at this moment. I don't know who to be. I know for me, after my mom passed away, that I sat on the front porch, and I just basically said, I don't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to be a mom. I don't know how to be me. And I got an image that I had to start liking my toe, my little toe, you know, because that was something I can go to. Hi, little toe. It wasn't the bigger picture. It was, thank you for being here. I had to start loving something, and doing that process and then working my way up the body gave me a chance to process that deep down. Holy crip and crap and dole. What did I just go through? You know, it was like I was thrown out of a car going 90 miles an hour, and I just kind of got banged up and didn't know what to be or do. And that's the emotional basis, that we get so banged up and bonged up that we don't know how to be and do, and we just have to persevere through it. Some of us have to go back to work right away, right?
yeah,
Some people have to do things, and we have to put things on the back burner. But at the same time, like, I had a client who lost a husband, got a dog right away, and then ended up the dog passed away. And so she was grieving her dog and her husband of 12 years earlier, right? So how do we, and she was, I should. And I'm like, no, you're grieving your husband again. Honor yourself where you're at. But remember to get up and move in spite of your emotions. Get up and eat something in spite of your emotions. Do something in spite of where you're at, but be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself while you're going through it.
yeah. Well, and the good news is too, as we both know, Natasha, is pets are in the afterlife also. So, and what I love in my sessions, and I had another good one this week, where She had a cat that was like her best friend when she was always like 20 years ago, and the cat had passed away, and she felt bad because she actually, physically would spank the cat a few times for bad behavior and that, and now she's grown and everything, and wouldn't do that now. But when the cat passed away, she still always had this guilt. I should have never spanked her, whatever, never,
Mhm.
whatever. So on the other side, when we're with the guide in this life between life process, the guide's there, and we said, is I forget the name of her cat. Is so and so here? And the guide said yes, and immediately there was her cat. Oh my gosh, she cried. She's in deep trance. She's crying, and I tell her, I says, now have that conversation, apologize, for your bad behavior and that, and see how everything is. And the uh, the cat was like, was no big deal, no big deal. You shouldn't be, you know,
It's a
but
thing.
what's interesting is because the soul over there, you're able to communicate just like you communicate with people, you know,
Hmm.
in that way. They're just that way. Um, Another thing too, which was interesting with a couple of my clients recently, and I'm just realizing how special horses are. You know, how,
Yeah,
horses are like
they're
they're
in
special.
the understanding of elegance or majesticness as elephants.
Oh,
So
yeah, I can see that.
I put
That's
them in
right.
this, I put them, you know how majestic an elephant is.
Yes,
But you look at a horse and you look at an elephant and they both hold the
they
same
they
energy.
do. Yeah, it's that peaceful, calm, that way.
Elder,
Yeah,
elder knowing.
it's something. Yeah. There's a good. I think it's called. It's a movie called. I think it's called Mustang Maybe, and
Mhm.
it's a true story about in Nevada. There's a prison there, and in Nevada they have a roundup every year of the wild horses, and they take so many of them out. They thin the herd, kind of, and they what they've been doing at this one prison there is they bring them there, and the prisoners get to choose one to take care of, and
Mm.
it's how this hardcore prisoner and that is transformed over this period of time by having to care for this horse, and this relationship that they do. I saw it at a documentary film festival about a year ago, and then it came out in the regular theaters recently. But I think it's called Mustang Maybe,
Hmm.
and it's just really neat to watch, and it's so true. When I was in Mexico, and they had a client in a rehab down there, alcohol and drug. It was a nurse who um, it was, I don't know if it was over grief or loss or something, but she started sneaking uh, drugs, signing out drugs, and stuff. And then pretty soon she finally got caught. And so she lost her job. She went into rehab. But at this place, they had horses every day. The people could go out and be with the horses. And they were just saying how that was really helpful when people were in rehab,
Well,
that way.
that's what animals are. They are I don't want to say in contract, but they are here as our supporters. They are here for our grace. They are here to negotiate, help us negotiate something about us. And what can we do but to trust that part of the animal? It's like there was no mistake that one of my clients whose dog just passed away, that came right after the kind of dog that she wanted and needed, came right after her husband passed. There was no mistake about that. Or there was no mistake that I had a tortie cat that came to me that was 7 years of my husband's last years of drinking and then the 7 years of him becoming sober. There's no mistake that she was in that 14 years, a very hard time working up to it, and then a harder time of releasing and shift and letting life shift. And then at that end of that 7 years, she said, um, Natasha, I can't support you anymore. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. And then I got another cat who was like,
Mm,
you know what? I can't be what you want me to be. So you're going to really have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet.
wow.
You know what I mean? So with that, the animals are here to support us. in what they're doing. It's that interacting with them. And so not everybody can have an animal. Not everybody is attached to an animal. But when you get an animal like a deer, like I did a video on deer the other, about 2 weeks ago, about how a deer was laying in my yard and she was looking in through the window at me. She knew I was there looking at her and
Yeah.
she was like staring at me. And it was just so magical how even a deer was telling me, stop, breathe. It's okay to be, it's
Hmm.
okay to sit and be majestic yourself, and do that, because there's a majesticness that deer have too. But there's something about a horse. There's something about
Yeah.
a horse. There's so much
It
of
is.
service.
It's interesting. It's like I'm glad you put that. Like, because we think an animal's an animal. Well, different animals now, as I'm learning more and more, have. It's like they live on different vibration levels or something.
Hmm.
And like a cat is the vibration of that, and having a cat on your lap is a different feeling than having a dog on your lap,
Exactly,
or
because a cat purr can actually change your vibration of your body.
wow,
They're
yeah,
at a tone. A cat's purr is at a tone that it can actually shift your heart rate.
wow, it's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it just so the different animals have different. Uh, it's almost like they have different jobs, when they're down here.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to a funeral this next Saturday. I have to down here in LA, and I'll get hopefully have fun on this. Let's make a deal thing. But then I have to head back to Sacramento. I mean, back to San Francisco, and then over to Sacramento Saturday. And for a family member, that I told you about last week, that my one of our family members, in the 7th month of pregnancy, she just could
Mhm.
feel that the baby wasn't there anymore because it had been kicking and moving, and all of a sudden it wasn't. And then, but what was interesting is that when she went in, she waited 2 days until it was her birthday, and says, "Okay, now you can take the baby out." And so they took, her and her husband. We got a picture of them holding the 7.5-month-old baby that had died. So we're going to have, so they, of course, named her. They had a name for her. She's just as if she had been part of the family. And so, I'm trying to think what the name was now. I get these names, it's like Sylvia or something. It starts with an S, I think. But anyway, so the whole family is going to be there for support. And it's just sad because they have from in vitro, because they'd been married about 20 years, 18 years, I think, and tried having kids all the time. And now it's getting almost too late, but they had in vitro, almost made it, and didn't. So, um, maybe they'll adopt sometime, I mean, something, because they would both make really great parents,
Mhm.
so, and you
And
wonder
there's
why that
nothing more
happens.
than the grief of losing a child.
Yeah,
I put in, I don't know how many explanations I can put behind that label of grief when you lose a child.
a
It's
child, yes,
it's beyond, it's beyond comprehension in many ways.
yeah,
That that it's yeah, there's no words for it, because there is no words for it.
yeah,
It's unspeakable, and everybody handles it differently, and everybody negotiates it differently. And I honor anybody who has to go through that grief of, not being able to conceive a child, and then you finally conceive a child, and then
yeah.
something wasn't right.
Now here's
And
what I thought is interesting in the work that I do, of course, with this life between life process. um, when we ask people, when they get to heaven, the other side, and we'll ask, one of the questions we ask sometimes is, when did you enter your mother's womb? When did you enter it? And most of the time, it's usually, when the fetus is pretty well developed.
mhm,
Sometimes they come and they go. They kind of like, getting ready. They'll come in, then they'll go back home to heaven, then they come back, and then back and forth.
mhm.
But a lot of times, a lot of souls don't enter the body until just before birth or pretty close to it. So,
Yes.
made me wonder if that fetus that they pulled out, actually, if her daughter, or the soul had actually even entered, or if the physical
No, but
component.
the soul was with the parents. The soul knew that it wasn't gonna be coming in all the way,
Mhm.
so that soul did some visiting with the parents.
Uh,
sat with them and gave them whispers and I
during the
see her.
you mean during the dream state or something,
Yeah, and I
or
see
that?
and well, like, when they're sitting there watching TV, I feel like that she gave them hugs because she knew that she couldn't be what they needed her to be.
Mm,
And so there was a lot of energy exchange in the soul, before it came in. Sometimes when the soul knows it's not gonna be in for a long time, or
hmm
that it's like the scenario, they do visit a little bit more as a soul family caring for another soul family.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
hmm
there's because we all have soul families, family souls that kind of stick more closer together than others do.
See,
Um,
yeah, this is where you could see my um, they're very very Christian. They're not into believing in what I do. Even though I would love to help them because then they could go to the other side and they could have a conversation with that soul, find out why, and everything, and get some comfort from that. But if it's some later point, I'd like to, you know, maybe after 6 months or a year, if it feels comfortable, I'll mention that one of the things they can do if they don't want to if they don't believe in what I do, well, maybe they don't believe in mediums either. But you'd be surprised how many people open up to mediums when they're going through a loss.
yeah,
Because they
exactly.
think, well, even
Exactly.
if it might be true, even if mediums, even as possible, I want so much to have to know what's going on. And I think that's why people a lot of times go to mediums because I've had some of them tell me that they've gone to mediums and they'll go, well, I didn't really believe in it or something, but there was something she told me that my dad through her told me, and only he and I knew about it. And so maybe it was true. They'll say they start becoming believers, don't they,
Yeah,
Natasha? When
exactly.
that kind of thing happens. So, maybe something like that. But they're going to try again, probably. You know, but it's very expensive. But their church has actually started a GoFundMe thing for them to try to get enough money to do another in vitro and to see what happens. So got a good support from their church, which is great. So
Yeah.
maybe it'll happen. So animals, you know, our parents, our significant others that pass away. Patty and I were talking the other day because see, I'm 73, she's only 65, 66 actually. So we just casually were talking. He says, "Well, one of us is going to go first, you know, unless we're in a car crash together or on an airplane somewhere
Mhm.
and we go at the same time." So, we started talking about that, and um, I think, don't you think too? It's good. Well, especially when you as you get older and it's inevitable, it's coming, to have conversations with your significant other about when you go, about of course, get your affairs in order so they don't have to go through hell figuring everything out. Have all your financial stuff in order. And then, like I told Patty, I said, look, if I go, I'm going to be on the other side rooting for you and whatever years you have left to find another companion. I said that, I says, I'm not going to be up there being jealous or anything like that or shooting lightning bolts at somebody if you go dating somebody. I say, there'll be somebody else there that you can help, like she's helped me, someone else that could use your love.
Mhm.
So good to have
Exactly.
those conversations ahead of time.
Oh, it is. I know for me, when my parents passed away when I was in my late 20s, that I had that conversation with my husband, and we set up a will. We set up
Good.
power of attorney, or not power of attorney, but we knew what
A
we
living
wanted to do with
trust or
our
something.
bodies afterwards and
Good.
stuff like that. Um, so it's time to revisit that conversation because 30 years has gone by,
Yeah.
or 20 years, 30 years. And so it's time to revisit the conversation about what we would want to do and who we would want to be, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I would say, because I can tell you that when someone has passed, that the family does not usually bode out well. Usually when
No.
there's a passing in a family, it can destroy many families. And it's so sad how perceptions and grief turns um I don't know what you would want to call it, but it's not a good thing,
It's not
and
good. Yeah.
and people who are ill, like from when my mom was ill with Lou Gehrig's disease, there's some family members that said I can't visit, and I said I understand. You can't visit my mom because you don't want to see her laying in bed shriveling away. You want to remember her as Linda back when she was walking around and running around and being her happy self, right?
Yeah.
So some family members can't do the end, and there's some family members who can, and so you got to give, if you can, give grace where it is. But and then people who are passing, my mother of heart, after my mom passed away, a woman came into my life, and she was my mother of heart, and Pat wonderfully started giving things away when she was alive to the people
Yeah.
that she wanted them to have them, because of the fact that she didn't want um that pain of people fighting over her stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to honor the process of emotions, and not everybody does it well. Not
Yeah.
every and have it in writing so it's clear, so that people know that, hey, you can't come in and steal stuff, it's right here,
Yeah.
but if the person who's knowing that they're coming to an end can say, hey, can you do this, or you take this, I want you to have this, I want you to have that, then even though there's squabbles maybe outside the family, well, why did she give you that when I've been wanting it all the years,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had
people
number
are
of.
not people are so like unattached to the greater good for everyone, and it's so sad that there can be these quandaries in family. um and so may love be with everyone, because it's not an easy place to be, because grief does not bring out the best in us many
It
times,
doesn't. I know. Especially if
especially
the
when we're
reading.
really in it.
Yeah, the reading of wills can really be crazy sometimes, because even though with the best intentions from parents, sometimes if one sibling gets a little more than the other, then that starts a whole mess. Oh, mom loved you more than me, and she's always, it's crazy. Like when I have all these grandkids now, and even me thinking about my musicals, like I have 3 guitars and a keyboard, and I have a bunch of stuff. And I think it would make sense to look at my grandchildren and see which one would benefit from it most, because I have one of them right now who's really been sticking to guitar lessons, and
Hmm.
really loving that. Okay, so he would make more sense than my other grandson that, plays volleyball, but he's got no musical talent or no interest in anything like that. But at the same time, part of me goes, well, I don't want that person to feel guilty that I give them a guitar, even though they probably won't ever use it, rather than to the person who probably will use it and benefit by it. So,
Yeah, but that thing is though, like I have my uncle's guitars, and I don't play a guitar, but me seeing it on a
yeah,
stand, in a bedroom where it can be honored. But that's the thing that I have to be careful of. I have to really be careful of keeping things that people, I have other things that are just important from my uncle too. So, I'll get to a point where that stuff doesn't really make that much difference.
yeah,
The memories are there. I'm still processing that, that I do, I'm not a minimalist. I'm not. And so, but then at the same time, I also know that, like when my mom was passing away, there was things that I couldn't make a decision on, right? There's just I couldn't make a decision on. So I put it in a box. And I just put a couple things in a box that I knew that I couldn't make a decision on it later. And so I sealed up the box, had life happen, took about a year before I got to that box. I opened up that box and I went, oh, why did I save this? I don't know why I saved that. But then there was this other thing that was like, oh, thank you. I'm so grateful I saved that. Right. Because that
yeah,
piece was something that I wasn't sure of, but then at the same time, the other things in the box, they went away, but
yeah.
I wouldn't have made the best decision at the time because I was so emotional.
What I
Yeah.
do at Christmas time when I buy gifts for the 4 girls, a lot of times I keep it in the same category. Like I'll buy hats, or winter stuff or scarves and things like that. So when I see them, what I do is I do numbers from 1 to 4, you know, and I decide to I put, my hands out and they get a tap. And okay, you get this number and you get that number. And then I tell them, if you don't like the color and you want to switch it with your sisters, you can, because I didn't want one of them thinking, oh, you're giving the best one to her, whatever.
Hmm.
So I just let them pick, and they like that in a way. I said pick because it'll make kind of a game out of it. And they pick, okay, you get this one, you get this one, kind of thing. Or
Exactly.
when I buy jewelry, especially, because sometimes I'll buy 4 different bracelets or necklaces or something. And so anyway, uh,
It's a thing,
so
but going back to grief,
yeah,
we're down to the last couple minutes here of the show. I hope that this show was really helpful in understanding a perspective that, remember, grief is not a destination. It's a journey, and it's a journey that can happen for the rest of our lives. And, and it's okay if it does. And it
yeah,
really is, going back to that metaphor that I had, that every time we lose somebody, it's like people energetically climbing in the car, that we carry them for the journey of our road that we're
yeah,
going down in life. And, what can we do with that? But sometimes, even to this day, I still have to sit down and watch a soppy movie and cry. Just
yeah,
let that emotion out, and then move on, and honor that I do have times where, like, I kind of go, why am I so funky the last part of June? Oh, my dad passed away,
yeah,
and it's like, because I had my dad passed away around the 25th of June. My uncle passed away July 1st, and then my mom passed away at the end of August or September. So, it's like when we're going through these times that we kind of get into this layers of sadness, and it's okay if we go there. But remembering that everything has an energetic timeline, and sometimes our bodies and our emotions remember things when our mind doesn't remember. And so don't please don't punish yourself for being sad, or that kind of thing. But
yeah,
remembering that, if you are in depression too long, like for me, when I was going through, especially the first year of grief, that when I was going through that grief process, that I would give myself, everybody went to bed and the house was dark, and I turned on the soppiest movie I could find. I cried forever that night, and then the next morning I would go wake up and say, okay, grief, you had your time last night. I honor that we have grief moments as we're going down the road or doing that kind of thing, and I'm going to say that I'm going to let you have another grief night soon. But we got to process. I still got to do life, and it is a day, and it is a moment that we're going through. And hi, Guy, thanks for being here. You're catching us at towards the end of the show,
hi
but we're
guy,
talking about grief, and you doing the grief process. My love is with you, because it's not an easy dance, and it is a process. And it doesn't matter if if you have animals, if you have kids, if you have grandparents, if you have husband, wife, if you have a coworker, if you have a best friend, it doesn't matter what that grief is. Or if you lose a job, or if you can't eat that food anymore, if you are going through a scenario of a road closure, that you normally go down this road, whatever it, endings with new beginnings, whatever it is, honor yourself through the grief. And Guy, thank you. I always come in late. Yes, so we're here at 4 o'clock Pacific time. And so remember, you can always watch the beginning of the show. This is recorded, so we just happen to be live at this moment. And then it goes on to recording, because you can watch it later. So thank you for being here.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I have just finishing up a good little story about me trying to help somebody get through grief. It was back when I was dating, back when I was 23 years ago, and I met somebody online. We had a date scheduled, and then she had to cancel at the last minute because her brother-in-law died. So she'd already given me her address. It was about 100 miles I had to drive. And I knew from talking to her that she liked apples. She was from Russia. And she talked about, growing up, that was her thing, is this apples. And so I was in the area when she broke that off. And I thought, I had just gone through grief myself. And part of helping me get through the grief were some of these this beautiful music I would listen to that would get me into the mode, and I would be able to cry and get the
Mhm.
feelings out. So that's when I was realizing that music can help you get through the grieving process. Like you said, put on a soppy film. So, something that helps you release all that emotion,
Mhm.
So I had those CDs with me. So I thought, well, I hope she doesn't think this is weird or something, because I've never met her in person. But I thought I did a little, did the hue, or, HU, singing like or Om, relaxing and saying, is this just a love thing? I don't want her to think I'm some weirdo. So I went to the store and I got like 6 different kinds of apples. I got a little basket to put them in, and I put some CDs. And I said, well, I'm looking forward to meeting you at whatever time's right for you. But I just went through grieving myself, and this music helped me get through it. So I left it on her doorstep, and I'm just like, it was kind of a spiritual thing, that I was doing,
Mhm.
not so much a thing. So here's what showed me that I did the right thing. I leave her house. I turn right and I turn left. I go about 2 miles. All of a sudden, I'm turning the corner and there's an upholstery shop. Well, I had been thinking when I was in that town, I was going to find an upholsterer to reupholster my steering wheel because it had gotten all yucky, kind of
Mhm.
thing. And I just thought, oh, well, let me just pull in here. And so I pulled in, ran up to the door. It was closed, but then I noticed that the little garage was open. So I walked into there. Here's this guy working on it. He says, sorry, sir, we're closed or something. And I said, oh, I was just wondering how much it costs to redo my steering wheel, And he says, hey, I want to show you something. And I went, what? He says, follow me. And so I followed him. He took me to the end of the garage. There were stairs that went up into like an attic. And I'm thinking, is this guy a serial killer or something weird? Nobody's around. And he just met me and he said, come here, I want to show you something. We go up there or something, and for some reason, here's this random stranger. He says it was a music room, and he had a band that he had on the weekends and stuff. And he said, look, we just finished yesterday producing our first album, and I want you to have a copy. And so he walked over, he gave me a CD. So I immediately connected that.
Yeah.
God was saying, you give someone some CDs that way, we're going to show you that you did the right loving thing by randomly going into a thing and some guy goes up and gives me his first CD that they just produced. You
That
know,
is so cool.
isn't that cool? So that shows you, like, how we should support others. In other words, when they're going through grieving too, because we all go through it. So,
Yeah,
the,
and
the
there's just no way to know what somebody else is feeling. And that's why
yeah,
sometimes I just say my love is with you, because
yeah,
it is a process. So Monica, thank you very much. Prayers for Lady Gabo for the deep loss of the unborn child. Yes, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for that. And then
That really, yeah.
Guy said,
Wow, been there.
I've been there. Yeah, it's amazing. So go ahead. I interrupted you.
Well, I was just saying, I wasn't really shocked, but this last weekend, 3 of my daughters and 7 of the grandkids came the 100 miles to have a pool party and everything there. And they were all talking about this person who had lost the baby, and we're all going to the funeral next week. But all of my daughters, including even Patty and me, it affected us somehow, really more than other things about this baby. And everybody cried, It was just very,
Mhm.
it's my daughters, because they have the 7 grandkids, so they've all been through the birth process and all that. So I can see even why they would even be more emotional, because they know how that feels as the baby's growing and it's about to be born, and here's this little soul in your belly
I
that is going to
know.
be your child, and then to have that just pass away, you know, like, and you're just so ready, So anyway, I'll let you know next week how the funeral went. So sometimes, yeah, it's hard to know how to support. That's why I think what neighbors do and everything is like, what's nice is her church has someone that's bringing them meals every night for a month, and so
Mhm.
they don't have to worry and get through this. And I thought, what a beautiful church, really support their her that
Exactly.
coming by bringing food. So sometimes you don't need to say anything; you just need to do some service or to do something for them.
Mhm. Exactly. And Monica says, life acts in mysterious ways. Yes, it
Sure
does.
does,
You know,
Monica.
synchronicity. I am just in awe of the synchronicities lately. I'm just in
Yeah.
awe of I'm just witnessing, how life works out if you move with it. And Guy says amazing. So thank you guys for interacting, and we do hope this conversation with some kind of grace can come to you, knowing that no matter who you are and what you're doing, that it's okay where you're at. It's okay where you're at, and how do you maneuver through the emotions that you're in,
Yeah.
because it isn't a straight line. Grief isn't a straight line. And like I was
Yeah.
saying, that when we start out in life, kind of, my kids start out in life at the car almost full. Because my kid, who was born at the same time my dad, or pretty much within weeks of my dad being gone, his car was already full coming into this world. And so 7 years later, he lost pretty much all my mom's side of the family. And so with that my oldest child, his car was full. So now, like he said, the other day, he had a friend that lost a grandparent, and that was the first time this friend lost anybody. And my kid says, "Mom, I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like." And so sometimes, when you understand that grief, even if you go and stand by somebody and just send love to them, that is more support sometimes than anything else. It's just
Yeah.
saying, I accept you as you are. I witness you as you are. And I'm sorry for your loss, Regan. It's not easy on the family. It's not easy on the person. And so,
We were all talking about, though, how beautiful it was to have family. I mean,
mhm,
so many people don't have. I mean, we had with my three daughters, so that's 10, and then their significant others. So altogether, we had, I think, 20 people that were there. But when we did the group picture and everybody was swimming and having fun, and I spent, I think, $450 on food altogether for 3 meals, that we had. But it was well worth it, just to give everybody a good time. But we all were talking about, even though there was this loss, how lucky we were to have each other.
mhm.
How lucky we did have family and that everybody cared about each other. I'm so lucky to have such a loving, good family that we don't have any, we don't have any, we don't have a tough one to deal with. Usually it seems like in a big family, there's always one that everybody doesn't get along with, but we all get along and support each other, so it's good.
And
You
that's
know,
where we got to count our blessings while we have them,
yep,
because we don't know what the next moment is going to be. And I send gratitude wherever I can, and love wherever I can, because I just
yep.
appreciate life as it is. Life as it is. We just don't know what tomorrow is going to be. But yet, at the
Life
same
is good.
time, there's miracles happening. And yet, there's some people who are choosing to say, I don't want to be here anymore on this planet. And how
Yep,
can we negotiate that? How can
yep,
we negotiate it? By just saying, I hope love is with you all.
yeah, yeah.
So
We'll
if
be here
you're,
next week.
yeah,
So I'm going
so
down. I'm going to go down to be on Let's Make a Deal. So this time next week, I'll let you know if I even got pics, or if I won a stove, or or won, or did I get zonked? Maybe I win a donkey or something. But should be fun. I could have a new car. Who knows? We'll
you
see.
never know. You never know. So, Regan, how can people get a
All right.
hold of you?
They can hold me at visittheafterlife.com. And just briefly, I have a regular hypnotherapy practice and then my spiritual practice. In regular hypnotherapy, I'm an energy psychologist. So we use EFT, havening touch, and EMDR, three things that can work with fears, phobias, anxiety, grief. And I'm here to help you through Zoom, or even just phone calls if you don't have Zoom, or if you're in California somehow. I see I'll see people. I'm down clients down in Los Angeles, but I live in San Francisco. But I go over to Sacramento. I'm kind of a traveling therapist too, so I can help you if you need some help. If you want to do the spiritual side, I help you get in a deep state of trance through the Newton Institute protocol. And believe it or not, you expand your awareness to the afterlife. Spend a couple hours there, and have prepared questions so you find all about your life. Why you were born, what your mission is, why you chose the people in your life, so many things. So we've done that with 70,000 people, and happy to help you. And Natasha, how do they get a hold of you, my dear?
You can reach me at angelicclarifications.com through my mediumship and through my multi-lives of intuitiveness, that I really can get a grip on why things happen and have a deeper understanding. People go, what how do you know all that? And I just go,
Yeah.
Been there, done this several times. So with that I do this with kindness, and I do this with honor and no judgment. As if I didn't do it in this lifetime, I've done it in others. So if you're going through the grief process, I have it firsthand. I haven't lost a child, but yet at the same time, I was 20 years with a woman who lost a child, and I witnessed her and held her even 20 years later, crying sometimes because she lost a child.
Yeah.
And so I can put my shoes on and understand the walk a little bit differently than some can. So with that I do honor you, and I do, like, I did a group mediumship where there was 10 women there, and 7 out of the 10 had lost children
Oh, wow.
in that group mediumship. And what an honor to be there, being a voice for their children. And so
Mhm.
with that, some of them were adult children, some of them were younger children, but I was grateful to be able to be there in that moment to be so. Trust the process while you're grieving. Angelicclarifications.com, and I would love to support anything to help anybody negotiate this moment of loss. So, or
Yes.
even a life problems, or emotional based, or I do DNA work. So it's not just grief, but today's conversation was to
Yeah.
honor grief. And
We are here to
Monica
help.
for
Here to
sending
help.
Veronica sent a little prayer sign, and then
Oh,
uh,
thank you, Brown. Thank
and
you,
then
Monica.
Monica says, our heart goes out to Regan and your family. Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for that. Thank you for that. I send my love to you, with you, as you go through this moment too. So glad you can have a little joy, and I hope you get picked
Yeah.
at the game show, and then to be in the moment of honoring the family and supporting the family like you do.
Yeah.
You're amazing. So thank you everyone
All
for
right,
watching.
buddy.
We're here on
See you next week.
yes, and then on Wednesday at 4 o'clock Pacific time, I will be hopefully having a guest on, and we're going to be talking about forgiveness and new perspectives on forgiveness.
Okay.
So,
That sounds great.
Guy says my love is with you, Regan. So, thank
Thanks,
you
Guy.
everyone for being here. And if you didn't get a chance to watch the whole show, remember this is recorded now, so you can watch it anytime. And if you have any podcasts you like to listen to, you can go to Life Clarifications with Natasha, and you can find it on most podcast platforms.
Yep.
So please like, follow, and share if you feel the need. Blessings to all. Bye now.
See you next week.
Mhm.